Hey guys, I hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to make a little video about the homework you're going to be doing, the exercises that you have that have been posted to LMS. So this is just a video about how to do all of those, and we will go over those answers on Thursday. Okay, so go ahead and go get a piece of paper and a pencil and pause the video if you need to go get that, but we're going to get started. The first thing that you're going to have to do in your exercises is what's called a stem and leaf plot. Now, you might have heard of that before, you might have done one of those before, but we're just going to review just in case you haven't. Okay. So the information that they give you on 1A is that the number of students in each of the elective classes at a school are given below. Use the data to make a stem and leaf plot. So we have all of these numbers at the bottom. We have 28, 24, 14, 12, 25, 32, 18, 23, 24, 9, 18, 34, 24, 27. That's a lot of numbers. It might be beneficial for you to put those in smallest to biggest, least to greatest order, just so what you're going to do next will be easier. Okay, but if you don't have that. It just might make it easier if you do. All right. So you're going to make a stem and leaf plot. So I did one for you so you know what I'm talking about and what this looks like. Okay. Every single thing that you do, graph or organizing your data, displaying your data, showing your data, is going to have labels. If it does not have labels, it will be considered incorrect. Okay, points will be taken off, so you got to make sure you put labels. So I labeled mine as number of students in elective classes because that's what we're talking about. Okay. And so because it's a stem and leaf plot, one side of this display has the word stem and the other side has leaves. So all it is you take your numbers and you split them up. Okay. What I mean by that is that for the stems, those are all the tens digits of your numbers that you've been given in your data. And the leaves are all the ones digits. And so what I mean by that is when you see, like, I have 0. Let's see if you can see this. I have 0 and I have 9, right? Well, up here in my group, I have the number 9. So I put 0 here because the number 9 doesn't have a 10, like a visible 10. It's an invisible 0, right? Okay. So I did the same thing for all of my numbers that begin with 1, all my numbers that begin with 2, and all my numbers that begin with 3. On the leaves side, you have to put those numbers in order from least to greatest. So for my numbers that begin with 1, right, I put 2, 4, and then I have 2 8s. The reason why is because in that group of data at the top, I have a 12, I have a 14, and I have 2 18s. So that's how you split those. Give you a second, make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. Okay. So I go through all my numbers. It might help you if you mark out each number as you go. Okay. So the stem side, you have to go from top to bottom. You have to go down like in order from least to greatest. And the leaf side, you have to go across. Whenever you do like your zeros, you're going to have to do least to greatest, right? I only have a 9, so that I don't have to do anything else. But for my ones, I have to do 2 all the way out to 8 because I had 4 numbers. Okay. All right. So that's a basic, that's just a regular stem and leaf plot. Okay. That's not anything crazy. But next, I have what's called a back-to-back stem and leaf plot. Back-to-back means that you're going to take the regular stem and leaf plot and you're just going to do a little bit extra. So the information they give you, Marty's and Bill's scores for 10 games of bowling are given below. Use the data to make a back-to-back stem and leaf plot. So here, right here, I have Marty's and here I have Bill's, and all of the scores that they've made for their 10 games of bowling. Okay, so if you notice, these are not in 2-digit numbers. These are 3-digit numbers. So Marty got like 137 and 149, and so on and so forth. And Bill got 129, and then 138, and so on and so forth. So I'm making a back-to-back stem and leaf plot. What that means is that your stems are in the middle of your plot. Okay? So if you look at mine, mine's in purple. All right, I have 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. And you might say, but Miss Key, that's 2 numbers. The regular one only had 1. That's because if it is bigger than a 2-digit number, then the first 2 digits are the stems. So, for example, if I had 124, then 12 would be my stem, and 4 would be my leaf. Okay? So, in a back-to-back stem and leaf plot, I put one person on this side, on the left-hand side of my stems, and I put the other person on the right-hand side. Okay? So I have Marty on the left and Bill on the right. So if you notice, all of Bill's numbers, okay, again, if they start with a 12, then it's in order from least to greatest. For Marty, because it's coming towards me, right, it looks like it's saying 731 because we read left to right. But actually, in a back-to-back stem and leaf plot, you have to read right to left. So if it says I have a 12 here and I have a 1 here, my number is actually, Marty got 121. So if you look up here, there's my 121. Okay? And I did the same thing. So on this side, it has to come least to greatest. Think about like a number line. If you were going into the negative numbers, right? You would have the smallest negative number here, and the biggest negative number would go out here. But they're just not going to have negative symbols in front of them. All right? So I also gave you a key to talk about what I mean by this, is that when it has, like, for example, it has a 14 where the stem would go, okay? And then I have a 1 out on the right-hand side of that. That means that that number is actually 141. In a back-to-back leaf plot, I could also have the leaf on the left-hand side of the stem. So if we read it like we do here, it looks like it's saying 314. But it actually is 143, right? Because again, remember that 3 is your leaf and not your stem, okay? Your stem is in between those 2 lines. So and those are the first 2 digits of your number, okay? So that's how you do a back-to-back stem and leaf plot, all right? Next up is a frequency table. Frequency table, let's see if you can see this. They give you this information. This is number 2. They say the final scores for each golfer in a tournament are given below. Use the data to make a frequency of each interval. So I have all of these numbers going across. All of these numbers, okay? So, frequency table, you have to put them into groups. All right? It's a lot of numbers, and so you need to put it into groups, smaller groups, okay? So, I went ahead and I looked, again, you can take all of these numbers and put them in smallest to biggest, okay, least to greatest, so that you can see this easier. You don't have to. You're just going to have to make sure you get every single number and that you don't miss any, okay? While you're doing these exercises, I would put them in least to greatest just till you get a hang of it, okay? So my smallest number I found out is actually 68, which is right here, okay? So 68, and my biggest number is 82, which is right there. So that's what I did. So I split it up into 5 groups of 3. So I did 68 to 70, 71 to 73, 74 to 76, 77 to 79, and 80 to 82. Okay. So when I'm talking about frequency, what that means is how many times did you see those numbers in your group of data? So I go through all of my data numbers, and I'm looking and I see, okay, I've got 170, I've got another 70, and I've got a 68. So in that group, I have a frequency of 3 because I only have 3 numbers that are in that group, okay? And I go through all my other groups. My 71 to 73, there ended up being 4 of those numbers. My 74 to 76, there were 6 of those numbers. My 77 to 79, there were 2. And my 80 to 82, there was only 1. So at this point, I've done what they asked me to do. They said to make a frequency table, and I did it, and I'm done. Okay? So just make sure, double check that you have used all of your numbers and you've put them all in the correct spot. The second part of this question wants you to make, using this frequency table that you just did, and make what's called a histogram. Now, if you haven't heard the word histogram, okay, it's basically a bar graph, but it is displaying the data, the frequency information. Okay, so I want you to try it, thinking about what a bar graph is. Pause the video, try it, just see what happens. If it's, and then we'll come back and we'll check it, and you can always fix it, okay? So pause and try to make a histogram. All right, so now we're done. You've done that, and we're going to check it. Okay, this is a histogram. Like I said, it's just a bar graph. The only difference is the bottom information. So usually in a bar graph, I would have something like apples, oranges, bananas, if I'm talking about fruit, or I'd have, if I were talking about numbers, I'd have like 1, 2, 3, 4. This looks like I'm talking about ranges, right? A small number to a big number, So these are my groups because we're talking about frequency, and I've done frequency table. My scores at the bottom have been grouped because if I didn't, that would be a lot of bars on this bar graph, and it might become hard to read, especially if you had a lot more numbers, okay? That's why we group them, because there are a lot of numbers and we want to make it easier to read. So on my left-hand side, I have frequency, and it only goes up to 6 because in my table, the biggest number is 6. You do not need to go higher than that because we're trying to make it easy to read and easy to get the data and be able to answer questions. So again, I labeled it golf tournament scores. I labeled my bottom scores, and I labeled my left frequency. All 3 of those have to be labeled, okay? Your scores have to be labeled, the numbers, okay? The frequency numbers have to be labeled on the left-hand side. I used 5 different colors, but you don't have to. You can use one color. I would suggest that, however, if you draw this with a pencil, that you would color in the bars at least with one other color, just so we can see the data a little easier. So that's how you do frequency table and a histogram. All right. The last thing we're going to do is what's called a cumulative frequency table. Bring it over so you can see it better. Now, my words have started to erase. Sorry about that. It just says frequency table. But this question says the heights in inches of the players on a school basketball team are given below. All these numbers, let's see if you can see. All these numbers where my thumb is, those are all the heights in inches of all the basketball players. That's a lot of basketball players. So they want you to use the data to make a cumulative over here, this frequency table, but I'm going to have an extra column called cumulative frequency. Okay, so out to the right-hand side where it has frequency, I'm going to make another column that says cumulative. All right? So taking all this information, pause the video and make a regular frequency table first. Since we've just done that, I want to make sure you know how to do that part. So pause the video, do the height in inches are your groups, and then the frequency of how many there are in each group. Okay, so pause, do that. Now, you should have done that, and you're going to get something, ignore this part, but you're going to get, I put mine into groups of like 68 to 70, 71 to 73, 74 to 76, and 77 to 79. Because if you look at all those numbers, my smallest was 68 and my biggest is 79, right? So groups of 3. So I go through all those numbers and I look and I see, I'm like, okay, so I end up having 6 numbers that are 68, 69, and 70. Okay, that's my frequency for my group 68 to 70. My next group, 71 to 73, there were 8. My next group, 74 to 76, there were 5. And my last group, 77 to 79, was just 1. Okay, so that's what we did for the regular frequency table. Cumulative is a little extra, and it looks a little crazy because I have arrows, but I only have the arrows so that you can see what you're going to do. Okay, you do not have to write these arrows in your note taking. I would, just so you're sure about what you're doing and don't forget, but you don't have to do this whenever you're like taking a test or whatever. Okay, so cumulative is the total number of frequency of all of those numbers. So what I mean by that is my group for 68 group, I had 6. My frequency was 6, right? I only had 6 of those numbers. So that whole group, I only had 6 total. So that's my cumulative. There's nothing before that, so I just keep it at 6. Okay? Now my next group, 71 through 73, I had 8 of those. So cumulative, what that means is you take that 8 that you have and you add the 6 that you had before. So you're taking all of the numbers that you have all the way up to that. Okay, so you take 70, so all the numbers you have 73 and below, basically 68 to 73, you take all of those numbers and add them together, and that's 14. My next group, I had 5, so I take 14 and I add 5, and that's 19. There's my cumulative for that group. And then my last group, I only had 1, so I take the 19 I had before and I add that 1, and my cumulative for 77 through 79, that group, is just 20. Okay, and that is a cumulative frequency table, and that's all you have to do. Okay? I hope this explains some stuff. I hope it helps. If you have questions, send me messages. We will go over your exercises on LMS on Thursday through Zoom. Okay? I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and talk to you soon. Bye.